All right, before we get started today, I want to give a shout out to Steve, the newest Patreon subscriber. What up, Steve? Thank you for joining the team here. If you want to support the show, you can check out patreon.com/bigtruth and sign up. There's 4 different levels of patronage there. They all come with their own exclusive benefits and whatnot. If otherwise, you can support the show. This is free. So just do me one solid, leave a review wherever you listen, and give it all the stars. On Apple and some of the other ones, you can leave a written review, write up a little review, and share the show. And make sure you subscribe and like the episodes. You know what I mean? Do that stuff. That helps me out, gets us a boost in the algorithms, gets us going and growing. All right. If you happen to be in a situation where you need some artwork, you need to check out Tattoo Flash Collective. You got a little space that's empty. You punched a hole in the wall like an idiot, like I've done. You've done, you just got, some space you want to fill up with art, right? Tattoo Flash Collective. They have Tattoo Flash, but they also have prints in all different sizes, books, whatever. And it's all supporting, it's all art created by tattoo artists around the world. And it's created by tattoo artists for tattoo artists and people that just enjoy cool art. But they hook up all the artists. It's not some weird corporate stuff where they buy whatever artwork for $5 off of Fiverr. They pay these people well, and they keep it all legit. So tattooflashcollective.com on Instagram and everything as Tattoo Flash Collective. If you dig motorcycles and punk rock and hardcore and stuff, then check out my shop, Chopperhead, at www.chopperhead.com, CHOPPAHEAD. We're a full brick and mortar motorcycle shop, 13 County Road, East Freetown, Massachusetts. You can come in, have your bike, get an oil change, get a full custom chopper built, get a engine built, speed work done, audio, whatever you want to do, we can do it here. We got a full service shop in the back. In the front, we got a parts counter and showroom. We got helmets, riding gear, swag. So even if you're not local, you can go to chophead.com and buy a t-shirt and support. You know what I mean? We are the lifestyle. We're not a lifestyle brand. We do it. We've been doing it for 2 decades and plus. So come on by. And if you're in the area, come through the shop. We're open every day except Sunday. All right. So chopperhead.com. We got that done. If you want more information on the podcast, go to bigtruthpodcast.com. All the episodes are there. And, besides all the other platforms that you listen to this stuff on. But we also got we got the merch up. So go to the store. Just click store, and then there's a link to get over to our merchandiser, and you get all kinds of stuff over there. Weird stuff, cool stuff, the usual stuff, t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, but, weird stuff like, iPhone cases and stuff that is just funny. Like, I'll order one every now and then as a one-off just to see and give it away or whatever, but it's funny stuff. But yeah, check it out, bigtruthpodcast.com. So today's episode, let me give you a little preamble on this one. This one's going to blow some minds. There's going to be a lot here. You might have to listen to it a couple times. Don't be offended. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be some stuff that might challenge you, especially if you have religious sensibilities or whatever. Just listen to it. Listen with an open mind. You're not going to agree with everything. Some stuff might be new. There's going to be some weird stuff in there. But, just check it out. See what you think. And hit me up. Let me know what you think about this type of content. It's a little different than the normal choppers and punk rock or ghost or UFO stuff, even though it does kind of tie into that stuff. But, check it out. This dude's legit. He's a good dude. And has just got your best interests at heart. So keep it locked.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
All right, and we're here with my man Todd Cave today, who I'm very stoked to talk to. I heard him a little while ago on Sam Tripoli's podcast, and he had a lot of interesting stuff to say, and I think he's going to blow your mind today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Annunaki and Annunaki bloodlines and how that ties into the world today and our concepts of religion, spirituality, even things like the ruling elite, Illuminati, whatever. We're going to get into it all. Todd's done a lot of research on this, and so, he's the dude to talk to. So, Todd, I know you're broadcasting live from down in Mexico. I want to thank you for taking the time to come on today and talk to me and our listeners here. How's it going down there, buddy?
Things are well down here, and a lot less crazy than in the developed West, like the UK, the United States, Australia, and stuff. And one of the reasons why I'm here is because there's a lot more freedom, and there's basically a rule that you follow, which is you don't interfere with anyone, and generally no one interferes with you. And literally, that once you understand that rule, you tend to have a pretty decent life here,
Yeah, like I was telling you off mic a little while ago, I lived in Mexico for a few months down in Oaxaca, and it was beautiful. The people are great, and it's like it's live and let live. Like as long as you it's almost a golden rule. Like you know what I mean? The basic tenets of society where it's just like do unto others, or you do you, I do me, and like you said, as long as I'm not interfering with you, like I can be at peace and you can be at peace.
There are two other rules here that I would tell people for anyone that's living in Latin America generally, and that is one: don't be flashy. Don't be walking around with bling and trying to have the most expensive vehicles and stuff like that, because you just make yourself a target, because cartels run this place.
Yeah.
And then secondly, do not get involved in anything that is competition with the cartels, and we know what their industries are. Yeah. So as long as you don't partake in those industries, you're not flashy, you're not loud, you're not obnoxious, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. I would say that the vast majority of issues that happen are because you are either competing with the cartels, or you're involved with them, or you're just being plain stupid.
Yeah, you brought attention to yourself somehow. Yeah.
Yes, as long as you don't do those things, honestly, you're okay, right? If you speak the language a little bit as well, you get respect from the people, and generally you don't really get stress, right? Issues, seriously, right? Like I've been here for a few years, and it's been really good for me. I've learned a lot, and as long as you realize that things work differently here, and then when you get to understand how things work, honestly, you can raise a family in this place, and you can have a pretty decent life. And what's not is just the propaganda that is on the media that tends to instill a lot of fear into people. And the stuff that we can end up talking about tonight, fear is one of the biggest components that is used to control humanity.
Absolutely.
And control how we think and what we think, because we're not taught how to think, we're told what to think. And the education system does a very good job of destroying future geniuses, because when children go into school, they are basically like geniuses because they have a lot of creativity to connect into higher realms of consciousness, because a lot of young children have imaginary friends and they actually see beings. And for them at young ages, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're just like, oh, that's their friend. Even my sister, I remember when we were young as children, she had an imaginary friend, and she used to be outside talking to this friend. Now, she and I, as we got older, and we even did Bufo Alvarez together, we discovered that this was basically like either her higher self. She calls them the group, where it's like a group of them, right? Because she always refers to them now, present day, as them, right? Mm. And one of them said basically that I'm your mother, right? I've always been there. So, like a lot of children, when they go into the education system, they get put through the meat grinder, and they come out being like, as you see a lot of these children, when they try to interview them, when they now come to school, they have no life skills. They don't know anything about history, geopolitics, current affairs. They believe everything on the TV. They tend to be more left-leaning than anything else. Some of them even very far left-leaning. So everything has been a systematic approach to dumb us down, brainwash us, and to control our minds.
Yes.
And
what's the end game?
the end game is to get us to upload our consciousness to the cloud. And the thing is that while this guy that wants to do it, Elon Musk, is, how should I put it? He has good things about him, and then there are other things that are quite worrying, because the thing that worries me is that he wants to implant microchips in the brain. And basically that will, the idea for that is that instead of you ascending spiritually, where you raise the body to higher realms, what they want to do is inject a microchip into your brain, so they know that you become synthetic, you become one with the Borg, you become the Borg, you become one with the machine. So they can read your thoughts, they can implant thoughts into your brain. And you just need to go back to someone like Ray Kurzweil. I think he said famously in 2007 that humanity will evolve to be their own gods, right? And I remember in the interview, he said that if a guy had seen, a pretty lady and he wanted to chat her up, then he would just download a joke from the cloud, and instantaneously it would come into his brain, and he would be able to go and tell her a nice joke in order to woo her, right? So these people that are controlling the world, they not really have our best interest in heart. And what it really looks like is that there are two factions that are competing for humanity and competing for us, and we're the pawns. And these two factions go way back in antiquity, way back. And it's what has created the dualistic system that we have. Now, the thing is about the modern day construct is not something that just came up maybe even 500 years, because what they have us thinking is that our present day came out of slavery that's just only 500 years ago. But in reality, our history goes back up to 450,000 years ago that we know about. And there's evidence to show that it's even older, but we don't have those kind of records on Earth, right? What we have are things called the Sumerian tablets, and we even have good information in the Hindu Vedas. Those are another good source of information, but they're a little bit younger than the Sumerian tablets. And the Sumerian tablets talk about a time that goes up to 450,000 years ago. And basically, they were written in the oldest writing system called cuneiform. So basically, these tablets are about 5,500 years ago and are around from 3,200 to 3,400 BC. As I said, these records document events up to 450,000 years ago and talk about a group of deities called the Annunaki, who appear to be what we call the fallen angels, or the Nephilim, or even the Watchers. Now, they're also known as the Annuna gods, because the Anunnaki is more specific to the bloodline of Anu, but a lot of people use the word Anunnaki as a generalization, but they're slightly different. But most people will understand who've read these information. When you say Anunnaki, they know who you're talking about. Now, on examination of these tablets, these stories and tales found in the Bible and other religious texts
I don't want to cut you off, but before you even get to into the Bible and other religious texts, with the Anunnaki, the origin of the Anunnaki, is that, and I'm going to ask questions that I kind of know some of the answers to, but just for the listeners' benefit, the origins of Anunnaki, is that something they descended? When you say descended, do they descend from the heavens? Do they descend from another plane of existence? Is it planet Nibiru? Like what is the, when we look at these tablets, do they say, because, a lot of religions and a lot of people have, we'll refer to people like the star people or ant people, and depending on the culture, what the religious context is that gods came from the heavens. But with the Anunnaki, is there like a path where they came from?
Well, the thing is that when you delve into a lot of these ancient sources, it seems to be a combination of extraterrestrial beings. Now,
Yes.
extraterrestrial just means not from Earth.
Yes.
Because the root word for terrestrial is terra, or in Spanish terra, and Portuguese the same thing, which means Earth. So extra meaning outside of Earth. So then when you look at other texts, you get a sense like if these are interdimensional beings, right?
Yeah.
So maybe non-physical. So from looking at all the information from both sides, I would say that it is either they're purely extraterrestrials, where they're like humanoid, like us. They're interdimensional, meaning they're non-corporeal, or a combination where they can have corporeal bodies, but they also exist in higher planes in the etheric realm, so they be spiritual and non-physical. So it's either one of the three, and one of those three is a combination,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So basically, these beings, they, according to these tablets, they came from a planet called Nibiru, right? And all the tales and stories that are found in the Bible and other religious texts appear to be mere copies of the original stories that were told on these tablets, with a few redactions and just some name changes. Now, there's a really interesting clay tablet called the Sumerian Kings List. And on it, it says, after the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. Now, the word heaven in reality just means sky. And it's only us English speakers that have a difficulty in understanding that, because we have two words. One is heaven, which is for us, and our understanding is an etheric, mythical place where God sits on a throne with a white beard and a staff and just ruling with vengeance. And then in other languages that are Latin-based, the word heaven and sky are the same. So in Spanish, you have cielo, which means both heaven and sky. In Portuguese, céu is both heaven and sky. And in other Romance languages, it's the same thing. So it's only us English speakers that really have a hard time conceptualizing. And that really, the sky is really heaven, and the heaven is really the sky. It's the same thing. And in these tablets, in this clear tablet, that it was said the kingship was lowered. So what that really means is that their control system, their hierarchical system, and their system of domination and control was brought to Earth. That's what it said, it descended. So all these systems of like monarchy and government, it came from them. And this, when they came to Earth and they landed in Eridu, and some translations, it has a G at the end, so we pronounce Eridug. They were in Mesopotamia, which is in present-day southern Iraq. And this area, the most prominent area was called Sumer. And Sumer was in Mesopotamia, and it was basically started at the Persian Gulf and reached north to the neck of Mesopotamia, where there were two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, and they meander much closer to each other. Now, to the east, you have a place called the Zagros Mountains, where you have scattered cities which thrived in trade and learned from Sumer. And then to the west, you have the vast expanse of the Arabian Desert. So this area, you find that these beings, they tended to set up around watercourses or near to the coast, because where there's water, there's food. Where there's food, there's life. Where there's life, there's a civilization. And where there's a civilization, it means that people will be. And that entire region, from the Persian Gulf right up to Mesopotamia, to the top of Lebanon, going all the way down to Canaan, and then down to the River Nile in Egypt, that area is called the Fertile Crescent. And that was basically one of their strongholds. And then on this same Sumerian Kings list, you had beings that ruled for many, many thousands of years. So there are these, what we call the 8 immortal kings, and they ruled for a total of 241,200 years. And we had the first king, his name was Illumin, and he ruled for 8 shars. Now, they say that one shar is 3,600 Earth years. So Illumin, he ruled for 28,800 years, and Alangar, he ruled for like 10 shars, 36,000 years. And then there's a really interesting, the last king was called Abaratutu, and he ruled for 5 shars. He was the father of Utanapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, who's also known as Zayasudra, who is really the Noah character. So this is why I say that a lot of these stories are just mere copies with redactions, right? And the Epic of Gilgamesh even is also found in the Atrahasis, and that is where he is called Zayasudra. And then other tablets, he's known as Utanapishtim. And basically, he even, with Baratutu, he ruled for 18,600 years. And then it says the flood came. Now, when after the flood, this is where it looks like if there was some genetic modification done to humanity that sprung up. Because when you read the Genesis story, it appears that there was more than one flood. And you can see that even characters like Methuselah, he lived for, like, from memory, 968 years, something like that. And then you had other characters, even like Enoch, he lived for like 365 years. You know, we were living at long periods of time. But because they basically genetically modified an existing hominid species, the DNA from them that they put inside the hominid species created what we call the Adama or the Adapa, which I would say is most likely the Alulim character. And the thing about that is that Adama really just means first man. So it's not necessarily one person. It was a collection of people because it was the Adamic race, which is the first man that they created. And even when that event happened, there's another tablet where there's Isis, or she's known as Inanna. She carried a child for 10 Earth months, and she holds it up and she says, "My hands have made it," right? So this is when they were creating humanity. So according to these Sumerian tablets, the Annuna gods are a group of deities to the ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians, and they say that they came from a planet called Nibiru. Now, some of the main deities were Enlil, who was the Lord of Air or Lord of Command, Enki, who was Lord of Earth because the word Ki means earth, Marduk, who was the chief god of Babylon, and Ningishzida, who was the god of vegetation and the underworld. Now, a really good book you can read to, give you an idea of the backstory will be a book called The Lost Book of Enki by Zachariah Sitchin. Now, a lot of people give Sitchin a real hard time, but what I would say is that Sitchin's book opens up your mind to be able to go and do further research, because the problem that we have is that we get bogged down with personalities instead of looking at information and then using that to open more doors and more gates and to read more books.
Yeah, and his reading those gets really dense. I've read that, and it can get you gotta read it you gotta go over it a couple times. So just to kind of keep, for people that are listening, when we say, so there's almost like there's been different iterations or civilizations what we're talking about here. Like there was like a pre-existing one before, man in the biblical sense is what we're saying, is it with the Adama and people that had or entities that had much longer lifespans, things like that. Yeah, sorry, man. Keep going, dude. You're on a roll. I don't mean to interrupt and derail you here.
No, but that is absolutely right. There appears to have been previous civilizations that rose, because we seem to have a rise and fall cycle for civilization.
Yes.
And it starts from the Golden Age and goes to the Bronze Age, then goes back to the Golden Age. And right now we're in the Bronze Age, going into the hard times, which the Hindus call the Kali Yuga. And then we're about to go into another golden Golden Age again. which is where what's happening is that people are being activated, people are searching for information, people are starting to question their belief systems, people are getting into things like meditation, psychedelics, people are doing the inner work, and this is where we're at now. We're coming out of the dark age, but the transition period between ages is the part that's the most difficult, because we have a emasculation of men in society, which has created hard times, and hard times are what really forge strong men, because they're men like you and I that would be standing up, saying our truth, doing investigation, asking questions. And this, I'm very bullish on the future, but this period we're in is the hardest period that we're going to ever go through. But the good thing is that once we pass through that period, then we go back into a golden age. And then we have to basically see how we maintain the golden age, because it appears it's just cyclical, and we may end up falling again.
Yeah. And some things, like, if I know this is probably new to some people, but if you really keep an open mind as we go through this and listen to it, but like, this stuff is recorded on those cuneiform tablets, which is some of the oldest writings in existence that we have. But even if you look at things like Graham Hancock's work, where he talks about a lot of the civilizations that we, and a lot of the ruins that we have, they're all dated way older than it's on record. The problem is with academia and the academy and archaeology, they don't want to go back and rewrite anything. And I don't know what the full justification is why they don't want to adjust things or rewrite things. But I'm sure we can get into that more. But just to go back, just to kind of get us out of like the Annunaki phase and into like the future, because I know we're kind of jumping around timelines here. Was it, I know in the, those writings, a lot of, what the Anunnaki was said to have, and this would explain the lack of like the missing link for lack of a better word, that the Anunnaki tempered with DNA of some kind of hominid on Earth, and messed with the DNA to genetically create man, to kind of help them mine gold. Is that where we're going with that? Sorry, man. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is that to understand the present, you have to kind of understand the past.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I take time and I try to break down things like the Anunnaki and religion and stuff like that is because they're all linked.
Yes.
And it is. And the reason and the thing is that what you said is actually true, that academia don't really want to update history, because what it is that everything is predicated on a big lie. And when you go and rewrite history, what it will do is that it will cause people to start to think outside of the box. And they don't want us to think outside of the box. And according to religion, the earth and the world is only 6,000 years old, right? And then when you start bringing in timelines of, 450,000 years ago, and then you had characters that live in for 36,000 years, people can be like, well, how is that possible? And then when you start to go and investigate, it all leads back to religion. It all goes back to using fear and guilt to control us. This is what creates the matrix, right? So it's actually all linked. And as you rightly said, in the last book of Enki, it says that they came to the planet to mine gold as well as other minerals to send back to their planet, Nibiru. And the Anunnaki,
they needed the gold dust for their atmosphere, right?
Yes,
what I remember.
Yeah. So apparently their atmosphere was imploding. We don't know why, but there's mentioned in that book that the atmosphere was imploding. And then when you read other tablets, they used to do a lot of mining of minerals, not only gold, but also silver and other minerals to send back. So it looked like they came here. Honestly, it just looked like they were like kind of pirates and bandits that came here to loot from Earth. And they brought their they're the lower caste. So they had like a caste system, and the Anuna gods were sort of like the hierarchical. So these were like the aristocrats, the monarchies, the heads of state, prime ministers, presidents, all these kind of people. And they were the ruling class, basically. And then they brought a lower caste, which were called the Ajiji, and they came and they were like the blue collar workers like you and I. And these are the guys that would be the equivalent of the people that are electricians, plumbers, bus drivers, etc. And because they wanted to come and do good and to help their planet, they came here to do the mining. But the work was like backbreaking work. And after a few thousand years, the Agigi rebelled and they stopped working. And then they down tools, and they basically were going to go to war with the Anuna gods. And basically, this is what caused this mutiny is what caused the development of the DNA tinkering of the hominid species that existed on Earth. Because when they went to Enlil's fort and they were to go to war with him, he had meetings with his brother Enki, and Enki came up with the idea of using the existing hominid species on Earth to create Homo sapien. Using and basically tinkering the DNA, and basically they wanted to have the race to be just smart enough to understand instructions and strong enough to do the work, which ultimately created the slave race. So whether it was their plan all along to create a slave race or it happened by chance, who knows? But the slave race and the slave system kept on Earth, right? Which I'll go into later. So Enki and his chief medical officer, Ninhursag, did thousands of experiments through clonation, creating chimeras, animal-plant hybrids, so things like the Centauri that were in the Greek pantheon and the Greek literature. Those are quite possible because they mixed animals with humans and plants with animals, etc., etc. But none of these concoctions were stable. So this is why they end up having to do more experiments to create humans in this current form. And it was only until they mixed their DNA, the Anuna gods' DNA, with the hominid species and used clay to mix it together that they were able to create a stable being so that they could teach to mine gold. Now, there are tablets like the Enuma Elish that talk about they sacrificed one of their own Ejiji called Alalu. No, not Alalu. I can't remember off the top of my head now. They sacrificed one of their gods and with a small g, and they did an incantation to transfer the spirit of the slain Ejiji into the Frankenstein body. There are other books like the Gnostic text that talked about the creator of all things allowed them to do it and told them that they need to breathe the spirit into the body in order for it to become animate and to live. So, these stories are told in several different places, right? Now, this whole thing is where the story in the Bible comes from when the Elohim said, "Let us make man in our own image using clay." And what the clay came from the clay jars that they were using to create to do the experiments, right? And it was only when they, like I said, they mixed their DNA. In the tablets, it calls that they mixed their essence. Their essence is the DNA. And they were able to turn on and off certain DNA. Now, the first set of man, he was a bit like a mule, right? He couldn't procreate. So they ended up tweaking the DNA to allow us to procreate because they were trying to make the slave race through clonation and making clones. But the clones, it was such a long, arduous process that Enki decided to tweak our DNA to allow us to procreate and to give us consciousness. And this is how we kind of started to wake up. Now, in Hebrew, the word El, the loose translation for it is God. And I am, so Elohim, the I am is the equivalent of S in English, which is plural. So this is why it says, and the Elohim, which is the gods. Now, the Proper translation of Elohim would be the mighty ones, the powerful ones, the judges. But gods with a small g is a loose translation. So it's not a monolithic one entity. This is the part that gets a lot of like religious people in a bit of a twist, because they're trying to say that Elohim is God talking as a collective, because he's everything. But in fact, these tablets clearly say the gods, or the mighty ones, the powerful ones. It is plural. And in fact, when you go back to look at the original Hebrew, and then you use the really good website you can use, is called Bible Hub, and you can use something called the interlink, and it will show you the original Hebrew and translation word by word by word, and you will be able to see that the original word was plural. It was never single. And then even words like Lord is a title that was injected in there to bring reverence, because it was always the gods, right? And when you look at it, it's actually a different text and font written in on top of the Hebrew, and when they translate it to English, to give a different meaning, because it's just a title. And to give context, in England, we have something called the House of Lords. And the House of Lords is a body that is like a council that manage certain things. So, and if they have it as Lord, so like you have like Lord Sugar, you know what I mean? You have Lord this, Lord that. They're men like us, but they just have a title. Lord meaning really master, right? So, you know what I mean? People need to understand that you need to be able to understand the etymology of words, what they mean, and that they do have meaning, right? So, as I said, then the first Homo sapiens were made in test tubes, and they mixed, the Anuna gods mixed the Anunnaki DNA and with the hominid species. And this is why on the king's list, it had that the kings ruled for a really long time, because they were pure DNA. So these would be like the equivalent of the Nephilim or the demigods, because they were hybrids, right? So we know through great work from people like Gerald Clark and Matthew LaCroix that we can track these Anuna gods to different parts of the world in the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, because of this, the symbols and the attributes. So Enlil's symbol is the eagle, and this is why he's called Lord of Air. And this symbol is very important through antiquity, because if you look at the most warring countries in the world, they always use the eagle. Russia, United States, Nazi Germany, it was all the eagle. And then Enki, he is really the serpent in the Genesis story, but he's mostly represented by the fish and the goat. And here's another character, his son called Marduk. His most prominent symbol is the bull or the bull calf. And when Moses went to Mount Sinai to, quotation marks, receive the tablets from God, when he came back, the Israelites were worshiping the golden calf, and that was symbology for Marduk, right? Because what these Anuna gods did is that they all created religions, and they tried to infiltrate each other's religions. We know that because when you look at the signs and symbols, you can track them.
So did they do this? Were they in like kind of a competition with each other, like kind of creating their own?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It was, so the reason I'm taking time to explain it in this manner is that we live in a duality, a dualistic system. And the dual system comes from these two brothers, Enki and Enlil, because their father Anu, so basically he's the chief god. He is sort of the king of the Anuna gods. And what happened is that the Anunnaki sort of like rules for succession for kingship is that you need to have your firstborn from your half sister would be the crown prince, right? Now, the problem is that Enki is the firstborn, but he is of a consort. So she is not of she's not Anu's half sister. And then Anu's half sister bore a son, Enlil. So Enki always felt aggrieved because he expected that he should be, he thought that he should be the crown prince. But in reality, that's not how the Anunnaki rules of succession work. So there was always this battle where the younger brother, who's the crown prince, was always trying to outdo his older brother because the older brother was a master scientist, geneticist, astrologer. He's the one that basically brought consciousness, because the story that is untold in Genesis, and you can find in the book of Joshua, is that the serpent in the Garden of Eden brought consciousness to man, because he told Eve that the God in the Garden of Eden is not the creator of the universe. And to give context for that, if you remember the story, it said that God was walking in the Garden of Eden and he was looking for Adam. So the first question is, okay, so if God is supposed to be omnipresent, omnipotent, and all-knowing, first thing first, why is he walking? And two, why did he not know where Adam was? These are questions that people actually don't ask, right? And people use a lot of mental gymnastics to try to explain why God was walking and why he didn't know where, where Adam was, right? And the simple fact was that was Enlil walking in the garden looking for Adam. And when he found Adam, he realized that Adam wasn't naked anymore. But that was not just only in terms of physical nakedness, but that was also consciousness and understanding that the God in the Garden of Eden is not the creator universe. And this story is told in the book of Joshua when Adam told his son Seth that your mother Eve, she taught me consciousness. She gave me consciousness, and she told me that the God in the Garden of Eden is not the creator of all things. And the book of Joshua is referenced in the Old Testament, but was just accidentally on purpose left out of the final canonical Bible, because it clearly states in Joshua that the God in the Garden of Eden is not the creator of all things. And that would destroy the narrative that religion has basically thrust upon us, right? So then you have Ningashida, who was also known as Thoth. He was the god of wisdom in Egypt, the plumed serpent in Mesoamerica and South America. And then you have Nanasin, who was the moon god of Ur, and his symbol was the crescent moon. And he is actually the god that the Muslims worship, right? So as you can see, there are a lot of things that a lot of people don't know, and there are many different gods with a small g in the Bible. And as I was saying before, signs and symbols are what rule the world. Now, getting back to the eagle symbology, I would say that it really breaks down, this dual system breaks down into the Enki faction and the Enlil faction, where the Enlil faction is more of a warring faction. So this is why all the countries that have eagles in their crests, their coat of arms, or their flags are warring countries. United States, Palestine, Iraq, Yemen, Syria, Montenegro, Austria, Moldova, we can go on, right? And the serpent consciousness, or the serpent energy, was really the giver of wisdom, because the serpent was always symbolized with wisdom. If you go back in antiquity, the Hindus would call them the Nagas, and then even the Dogons, they had serpent gods. So there was always an understanding that the serpent represented wisdom. Now, that same eagle and serpent consciousness came to battle 500 years ago when the conquistadors came to Latin America and Mesoamerica. And this is very, very well documented on the crest of Mexico. And you can see the eagle with the serpent both in its mouth and its claw. And that is symbology for the ego consciousness conquering the serpent consciousness. And the ego consciousness is more like a masculine, controlling, order type consciousness, where the feminine is more about compassion, kindness. Because the natives, when the conquistadors came, they accepted the conquistadors with open arms, right? Because they were just being very nice and compassionate and stuff. Plus, there's some other things like the legend of Quetzalcoatl. He was going to come back, and there's information to show that he was actually white. He used to ride on a horse. So when the conquistadors who were white came on horses, they thought that this was the return of Quetzalcoatl. So this helped also to be their downfall. So you see that there's always these two factions fighting against each other, and they always created religions, because what religion does is that religion allows our slave masters to worship them through the back door, because nearly all religion was brought to the people in the form of conquerors and used as a framework to control their mind. Now, my point here is that if you are a child of God and God is part of you, in your imagination, your God is supposed to look like you. And when you accept a figure, a picture of a deity brought to you by those conquering people, then you become a spiritual slave of the conquerors. And that is how all religion spread. Islam spread through the sword. And they basically, when they went to war, and they were either given, the people were given three choices: convert, go to war with us and die, or you pay a tax called the jizya tax, which is basically what we call extortion money, right? And Islam spread through conquest and through very, very high birth rates, not through of this loving message that is actually great. And then Christianity spread through the sword as well, because they would go and invade other people's lands. And Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, right? So when we start Christianity, we have to include Judaism in there, because the Israelites and the Hebrews were told by their God to go and cast out people out of their lands and go and ransack, rape, pillage, and do bad things, right? So we're talking about a very, very sort of like schizophrenic type of God, where we're told that God is supposed to be love, but yet still God in the Bible is doing the most heinous acts, right? Like God in the Old Testament killed about 3 million people. And, this is a very hard pill for people to swallow, So, and I always give an analogy to explain my point, why I say that the God in the Old Testament is not any other God but Satan. So I tell people, so I always, before I make that statement or after I make the statement, people say, but how can you make a statement like that? I say, okay, well, can we set up an equal scale of measurement? And I would say, well, can we agree that an apple tree cannot bear oranges? And most people say, yeah, okay, I agree that. I say, so if an apple tree cannot bear oranges, then can we agree then that a good person is a person that does good acts, talks, has nice words, and has nice thoughts, and is basically kind and compassionate? And people say, yeah, I agree that that is a good person. So that means on the flip side, a bad person would be considered as a person who does bad things, probably steals, kills people, has negative thoughts, and just, everything around him is all bad and negative and dark. And people say, yeah, I concur. So, okay. So then let's transfer these equal scales of measurement to God. So we understood that an apple tree can't bear oranges. We understand the attributes of a good person, a bad person. So if God tells his people to do kind things, go and help the poor, forgiveness, and just help and to be an overall good person. Would we agree that that's a good person, a good God?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then now, if God now tells his people to go and rape, murder, kill, have sex slaves, drive people out of their lands, would that be a good God or a bad God?
Obviously, that's bad, right?
Okay,
By modern
so
morality, at least. Yeah.
so if then that would be considered to be a bad God, I concur that the God in the Old Testament is Satan, because the God in the Old Testament killed almost 3 million people, and he's the one that is causing all the wars and the strife and the murder. And there's a very, very interesting book called The Wars of the Lord, or The Wars of Jehovah, or The Wars of Yahweh, depending on translation. And these are wars that actually were done in the name of God in order to basically have total domination on us. And even in that book, The Wars of the Lord, it talks about how they created the word God to be able to subvert us from, giving praise to the Great Spirit. Because in that book, there were two types of people. There were the theists and there were the deists. And no matter what they did to the theists would not relinquish of the Great Spirit. And that's what they refer to in the book, the Great Spirit, which is akin to some of the Native Americans, the word that they would use. They talk the Great Spirit, the Aborigines, etc. And then the deists, which when you look at it, deists, the Latin word is Deus, Deus, God, deists. That's the word, the root. And these are the ones that followed these, the Lord. And the Lord was actually many gods, because at one point in time, Shamash, who was an Enlilite, Marduk, who was an Enkiite, you have Nanarsin and an Enlilite. They all went to war and they tried to kill out humanity and make us slaves, right? And they basically banded together. And it just goes to show that they made it up, because they say that they made up the word God in order to trick us so that we would leave the Great Spirit. And it has worked really well, because just look at the type of world that we live in. We are living in a godless world right now, where the morality is going out through the window, and there's nothing really good. Just look at what social media puts. You know what I mean? The mainstream media is all fear and death. Do you hardly see anything positive in the news? It's all negative. And that is because fear is a very good tool that they use to control humans. Because
one quick thing, and this is super important, and I want to get back to right where you were, but just as like a aside, when we were supposedly created in God's image, correct? And then we read that these gods, whether it's the God of the Bible as read, or go back to Annunaki, there's good and bad. And so is that the thing? Like, we have both of it, both in us, both sides in us. Like, you know what I mean? If we're creating it, that's why people are creative. People are capable of great good and are also capable of great evil.
Yes, it looks like if we are made up of dualities and trinities. And one of the dual systems is that you have male and female, you have up and down, you have left and right, and you also have good and bad, or good and evil.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is with good and evil is that it is still very allegoric. And if you look at when the serpent, which was that story was a concoction story of basically what they had said in the Sumerian tablets. But if you just use the story that's specifically in Genesis, it's talking about when Eve ate the apple, that she would know the difference between good and evil. But in reality, that was actually a story that they're telling is a trick, right? Because what that does is that creates the dualistic system. Because to explain that, if you look at something called the caduceus is the symbol for medicine, and it's also called the staff of Hermes. And when you look at the staff, you see two serpents crossing the staff. And then at the top, you see wings of illumination, and then you see a crown. So what that is, that's a representation of one, the dualistic system, because you have two serpents on each side. And the good and evil is actually allegory for basically, so the stories that we have of the God of the Old Testament commanding his followers to do things that in their eyes is good, but in reality the acts are bad. Because so that means that on one side of the staff, that snake will be good, and on the other side it'll be bad, and then the other side good again, and it said bad. So it says that you would know the difference between good and evil. Now, in reality, we actually don't know the difference between good and evil, because in the mind of those people that are doing those things, they think that they're doing good. So it doesn't matter what you say or what morality you have, the attributes or the evidence or the outcome are bad, because rape, murder, and pillage are rape, murder, and pillage at the end of the day, no matter what reason or justification. This is why they say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because in their mind, they're doing God's work. So they're like, okay, I'm doing God's work. God said to go and kill these people, so I'm going to kill these people. But it's still murder at the end of the day. And this is the problem that we have. We don't understand the difference between what is really good and evil, because those that are doing it think they're doing good. In reality, the path that we need to take is the path through the middle. This is why we don't take sides. This is why the system of government was set up to have two sides, right wing, left wing. But people keep forgetting that it's the same bird. A bird has two wings, and it's the same bird, but we've been taught to have a limited perception and have a limited vision by just looking at one wing or the next. But this is why it doesn't matter what government comes into power or when they change, nothing changes, because the same bird is running the show, right? So the path that you actually need to take is through the middle. And what that path is that's the path of enlightenment. But the thing is that it's a very hard and arduous path, which is why many people avoid it. This is why Christ said that the path is narrow and few find it. You have characters like Buddha saying you need to take the middle path, go the middle way. And what that means is that's not choosing side. It's because the dualistic system is a system that causes us to be at war with each other all the time, right? This is why we will never have peace on earth if we still believe in government, because government is an unnecessary evil. And these Annunaki gods are the ones that set up government and the governance, and basically they introduced what I call the three main religions that create the matrix, which are the religions of money, the religion of government, and organized religion. And these three religions are the religions that create the matrix and the control system that keeps us in mental slavery and keeps us sometimes in physical slavery, because government will tell you, well, go on, we need to go and invade this country. We need to go and take their oil, right? Which is the same thing that in the Old Testament was happening. And then in the cuneiform Sumerian tablets was happening, where they were doing the exact same thing. So we are just following the exact same cycle and sequence of events, but just with different flavors now, you know? So
why do you think that is? Is it just like this system's been set up and rigged and like just kept alive through generations of bloodlines that are invested in keeping it this way? Or like, is it just that it's on us to break it and we haven't? Like, what do you think is the reason why it's still, like, all these thousands of years later, it's still the same, or you know?
Well, basically, when you look back at the history that we have, humans always seem to have this predisposition to worship beings that we see that are greater than us. And this phenomenon is captured in what you call the cargo cults. So in the Second World War, the United States Army went to some of these Pacific islands, and there was a guy, and their god was called John From, and John was John from the United States. Long story short, the United States, the GIs gave them tins of spam and other little things. So these people thought they were gods, right? And they would build figurines of the airplanes, the helicopters, even the guns and the clothes that they would wear, because they're thinking that they're worshiping God. So what it looks like is that humans have always had this predisposition to worship. And because of that, I would say that this part is looking at the tea leaves where these Anuna gods did not stop us from doing that. And in fact, they embraced it and encouraged us to do it. So what happened then is that because they liked all of this reverence that they were getting, it appears then that they just perpetuated it by just bringing in religions, and then in giving us things like government and giving us things like money, so that we worship more things that basically it would take us away from the Great Spirit. And what that has done is that has limited the consciousness of man to a point where we have become like very ignorant and very not very smart. Because when you look at the Sumerian tablets before the flood, humanity had one voice, and we were starting to wake up. And the Tower of Babel incident was when humans were starting to advance that level, and they tried to go to war with God, right? And that is actually a ziggurat or a temple, or it could even been a launch pad for a spaceship. It could be many things. But long story short is that we were starting to wake up, and they realized, hold on a minute, these guys, they're getting too smart. Because what happened is that there's a tablet called the Myth of Adapa. And in that tablet, Enki talks about how he made us to be one of the Anunnaki, to be the best of the Anunnaki. And what that means is that he viewed us as one of them because we had their DNA. We were hybrids, yes, but he viewed us because the Anunnaki just means of the royal bloodline. And he also tweaked our DNA to wake us up. But what happened is that because we were starting to get too smart and we were starting to break the conditioning, after the flood, they tweaked our DNA and they kept our telomeres, and they fused chromosome 2 together. And if you look at our genome, you can see that chromosome 2 is fused and the telomeres are kept, because we share this 98% of the DNA of chimps and that type of species, right? And basically, when you look at their DNA to ours, it is clear that the DNA has been manipulated and science is saying that a genetic modification like that is not natural, and it seems to have been done. They don't know and they can't explain, and they're saying that it happened about 200,000 years ago. Now, the Sumerian tablets talk about time of up to 450,000 years ago, and before the first flood, it was 241,200 years, which leaves circa 210,000 years, right? So science is saying 200,000, the tablets are saying 210, so we're in ballpark figures of, well, give or take a few thousand years. And this is when the genetic modifications seem to have taken place. So this is where they got like militant in terms of not allowing us to grow spiritually, dumbing us down, feeding us all these religions, introducing money, bringing in government, and basically bit by bit, brainwashing us and making us fight each other, because they realize that the more they keep us fighting, the more they can keep deceiving us, because the more we fight against each other, the less focused we are on them. and they are the bird that controls the right wing and the left wing. And instead of us fighting against each other, we should be going to war with the bird. And the bird is the control system that these Annuna gods have set up, right? So the thing is that it is our fault and it's not our fault at the same time. But what is our fault is having ignorance, because there's a lot of information out there in the world now that is counter the narrative that we've been given. And people that talk about these other narratives are called conspiracy theorists. But that word has been weaponized and came under the Warren Commission in 1967, created by the CIA, to basically push past the people that were truthers about the Kennedy assassination. And basically what that word has done is that from the time people hear conspiracy theory, it just goes through one ear, comes to the next, and people just write off what you're saying. But basically, that's another thing that they did to stop people from even investigating, because here, just a few years ago, the mainstream media was telling us that doing your own research can be dangerous, right? So, they come and spit a lot of these narratives to confuse people. So these Annuna gods, they changed their names wherever they went. From observation, I think that was deliberately done to confuse us, which is why most people who follow any religion don't know that they're actually worshiping extraterrestrial Annuna gods in disguise. Because Enlil, he was really Jehovah or Yahweh, Amaru, Ashur, El Shaddai, amongst others. Enki, he was more akin to Poseidon, Neptune, Ahura Mazda, Ea, Samael, Ptah, and Nudimmud. Marduk, he was Bel, Baal, Moloch, Ra, Amun-Ra, Horus, Huitzlopochtli for the Aztecs. Thoth was Ningishida, Melchizedek, Hermes, Buddha, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, Viracocha, and Nanarsin, he was the moon god of Ur. He's the god Allah for the Muslims. He seems to be the one that led the revolution for the Igigi. And also, the thing about the Bible is that the Bible is not actually a religious book. The Bible is really a historical book. It's a history book. And it documents how these various extraterrestrial gods use us to fight wars against each other, and how they rebuilt civilization after the fall of Atlantis. Because it really looks like if we had great civilizations of the past, and the last great one that we know about is Atlantis. And a lot of stuff after Atlantis fell, that was also another flood that basically wiped out civilization. Now, we're not sure 100% when that cataclysm happened, if it was before the Younger Dryas, or it was at another time, maybe 38,000 years ago. We're not sure. But what we do know is that Atlantis was an ancient civilization, and I don't think that it was only in one place. I would say that Atlantis is the civilization on Earth, because you have the same type of buildings, pyramids, and stuff like that built all over, where you have ancient cities that are off the coast of Cuba, off the coast of Egypt, Japan. You have ancient civilizations that are in Indonesia. Even just look at, there's even a story that the Hindus record, where there was this bridge that was created from India to Sri Lanka. So these I would say that Atlantis was a global civilization, and it fell. And basically, what we have now are the restart after Atlantis fell. And this is why you see that after the fall of Atlantis, and then when they started to bring in all of these things that I described, the three main religions, with so much vengeance against humanity, this is why you have so much war, murder, pillage, and bloodshed in the New Testament, because it was it was each of these gods who wanted total power and domination of Earth. And they did all of that because they wanted to hide the fact that they are not really the creator of the universe, and they don't want us to be able to distinguish the Mother, Father, God, who Christ spoke about, and the God of this world who has blinded the eyes of men. Now, in order to understand the Bible and the Abrahamic religions, I would suggest people read books like the Book of Enoch, the Nag Hammadi text, Pista Sophia, the Lost Book of Enki, and then I would throw in other things like the Atrahasis, the Enuma Elish, and the Epic of Gilgamesh. These are really, really good books, and that will help you to understand that everything in the Bible is not all true, and the Bible is not the mother source of all information, because the Enuma Elish talks about how the earth was called Tiamat, and that Tiamat was split, creating the moon and the asteroid belt during the war of Tiamat and the Annunaki, right? Because when you read the Babylonian version, it talks about Marduk. He went to war with Tiamat, and basically he fought Kingu, one of her moons, and he basically, after he basically smashed Tiamat, is what created the asteroid belt, which they call the hammer bracelet. Now, as I said prior, before, the Atrahasis talks about how they slaughtered one of their Agigi gods and did a reincarnation, and they recited an incantation while mixing his blood with the existing DNA of the existing hominid species and clay together. This is where the story comes from, God saying, let us make man in our own image, and using clay. And the reason for the creation of the Adama, which means first man, was basically to make us as a slave race, because Adam is not just one person. Adam is a race of people. And most names in the Bible represent a group of people, not just a person, right? And this is hard for people to wrap their head around, but after Adam, or the Adama, was created, he was actually both male and female. And the female, Eve, is the divine feminine spirit, Sophia, who taught Adam and gave Adam consciousness. And in the Nag Hammadi, it talks about the creation of Adam was more superior than the Archons or the Annunaki, right? And so what they did is that they created another body and placed her spirit in it. This is when the separation of man occurred and the fall of man, which is where the creation of Eve using Adam's rib came from. So everything in the Bible is not all 100% true. It's also sometimes allegorical, sometimes it's half truth with allegory, and then some of it is just plain made up and false, And what it has done is that because through their bloodlines, the ruling elite, right, they have been able to basically hide all history, change all history, and feed us stuff that is not necessarily true, right? Because their bloodlines, as I said, are how they rule on earth now, because there was once a time where they walked amongst man, and then they went behind the scenes. And there's something called the Saturnalian Brotherhood, or the real 13 Zoroastrian bloodlines of the Illuminati. And these bloodlines they can trace their lineage right back up to these Annuna gods, right? Okay. And the way the system is set up is that it appears that 3 levels of 13 families that rule the planet lock, stock, and barrel. Now, there are arcs, like hierarchy. So like the bottom 13 would be like the main people, like the aristocrats and that kind of stuff. And then the next level 13 would be like the royal families around the planet, like the Queen of England or the King of England, that bloodline, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, etc. And then above them are the 13 Zoroastrian families. And there are these families are the House of Borgia, Breckspear, Samagli, Orsini, Conti, Chigi, Colonna, Farnese, Medici, Gaetani, Farmfield, Este, and Aldobrandini. Now, out of these 13, there seem to be 5 families that are the main ones that are running the show. Are the Samagli, the Breckspear, the Orsini, the Aldobrandini, and the Medici. These seem to be 5 families. And if you go and look for research something called the Grey Pope is called Pepe Orsini. He's the head honcho. He basically is like the prince of the planet. And under the Grey Pope, you have the Black Pope and the White Pope. And the White Pope is the Pope of Rome. And they take orders from him. Now, above Pepe Orsini is where I would say that appears to be the Annunaki and are ruling things, because they're behind the scenes and they're doing everything through their bloodlines. And it really looks like if this is a spiritual battle, because their objective is to have as much negative energy on the planet, because it is through the wars and it is through the blood sacrifice, which comes in many different forms: circumcision, abortion, the normal stuff of murder, people on the streets. All of these create negative energy or emit negative energy, and they seem to feed on this negative energy. And this is why there's a constant push to have negativity on Earth. The music, through the food. This is why people need to understand that the whole idea is to attack us on all levels. So they attack us with the food. The food, most of the nutrients have been pulled out of the food. This is why most food is dead. Then to kill it even more, they give us things like microwaves, which only destroy all the remaining content in the food. Then they put in the food, they poison the food with sugar and salt and seed oils. So things like canola oil, sunflower oil, all trash. Sugar is worse than cocaine, because sugar is a drug and people use sugar every single day, but people don't use cocaine every day. And it's actually even more addictive, because just stop children from eating their candy bars and stuff, and they throw tantrums. They go berserk, right? Just like a fiend when he wants a smack, right? And then salt, the salt in the food is not even real salt. If you look at normal table salt is a combination of chemicals. And what that does is that, and then they have things like high fructose corn syrup. And what these things do is that these things tax the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is responsible for hormonal control, hormone regulation. So when you tax the hypothalamus, it means then that your hormones go out of whack. And then it means then that you tax the body, so the body goes into acidic state. So that's where you end up getting fat, lethargic, and you get illness, because the vast majority of all illness comes from poor nutrition and diet. Then they put fluoride in the water, which just dumbs us down and makes us more docile. And this is a proven fact. And in fact, it is really rat poison, fluoride. So this is why we become so docile, because if you're drinking tap water, not only is it full of fluoride, but it's full of estrogen mimickers through the pill that women take, because they just use recycled sewage and give us that water to drink, right?
They also find like antidepressants and stuff like that in various quantities in water sources around the country. I know in Mexico might be different. When you talk about attacking us through food, it's not just sugar's the not the least of it, but all the things that are in food in America that are banned even in European countries, through different means of process and whatnot. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. Like, no wonder there's so much cancer and obesity and heart conditions and things like that.
Absolutely, because things like red dye 40 and all these other dyes, they're banned in Europe, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
GMOs are banned in Europe,
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you because I have some of my clients there, American, and it's very difficult to get proper food, man.
Oh yeah. And proper food's not cheap compared to and it's not as available. You go into the average, store here, and you gotta seek it out. It's like there's for every good healthy thing, there's 3,000 things that are in brighter packaging that catch your attention and might be even cheaper than the good food.
Absolutely, and I think it's criminal because, for example, okay, for people that don't really know much about me, I'm an online fitness trainer, and I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. And what I do is that I get people into shape, but I also teach people about food and how food works. Now, sugar is one of the worst things that they can give us. It's not the worst, but one of them.
Sure.
And there are other things that you can use to sweeten your food, like monk fruit and stevia. And I was talking to one of my clients recently. He says, yeah, I use stevia. So I told him to show me what he uses. And when he showed me, I said, dude, that's all BS. He says, what do you mean? I said, read the ingredients. And when he read it, he said, oh gosh, but there's hardly any stevia in here. I said, exactly. So it is actually, I saw one in the supermarket. I swear to you, it was like, per 100 grams of the substance that you were supposed to be using as stevia, there was 1 gram of stevia in it. And this is being marketed as stevia. So it's actually false marketing. And then I saw the same thing with monk fruit. Monk fruit, it was not even 1 gram, it was 0.95, for monk fruit. So a monk fruit is a very, very good thing to sweeten with. So I had to say, dude, you need to throw that in the bin. So anyone listening to this here, now, this is the thing. In order to get into good shape and also to eat good food, you need to understand food. And if you're getting anything that is stevia or monk fruit, and if it is in sugar-looking form, it is fake. In the sense of stevia comes from a leaf, and if you're going to use it, it is green and it's in a powder. So they pulverize the leaves, and that is what is used, and that's what you sweeten with. Now, you will hear some people say that, it has a bitter taste, and this can be true. But if you get the good quality stevia, that taste is reduced because they're different types of strains, right? And the best quality strain reduces the bitterness that you tell at the end by a long amount. But you use so little of it, right, that it will last. The same as monk fruit. When you, because it's a fruit, when they dehydrate it, it tends to be slightly brown. If it's white, then it's only, again, fake. And then even still, read the back. If it doesn't say 100% monk fruit, it's not real monk fruit, man. It's just sugar being rebranded. And then we go and look at chocolate bars. Mate, I was in the supermarket last week because I like chocolate. And I was looking for a new chocolate. And I couldn't even buy any because, dude, for 100 grams weight of chocolate, it was 49 grams of sugar, which means that half of the chocolate bar alone was sugar, right? It is criminal, right? And they should be telling us about using ghee, lard, coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil. These are the oils that we should be using because they are fat, right? This whole sunflower oil is all crap. These things of butter that they give us, rubbish, right? This is why we are getting sick, because people need to understand that this is a multi-pronged attack on humanity. They poison us through religion. So this makes us very polarized to hate our brother because he is not of the same religion as you. So you have to hate him. And this is the thing, the word religion comes from the Latin word religare, which means to hold or to bind. And what the religion does is that it holds and binds the minds of its followers and takes them away from source. It takes them away from seeing the divinity inside of them, because what religion does is that it installs a savior character into the picture, and you don't have to do any work. Don't do anything, because this savior character will save you. The Mahdi is going to come and save you. Jesus is going to come and save you. And then a new Messiah for the Jews is going to come and save you, right? And religion as a total doesn't tell you, oh, you need to heal your fears and traumas. You need to go inside of you. The kingdom within you is found inside of you. How to open up your chakras, do energy cleaning. It doesn't teach you all of that. Just believe in dogmatic statements, keep living your life, and you're going to get saved. Then government, the next religion, is your friend, right? The government is going to be there to help you. The government will keep you safe. When there's a disaster, the government will be there to help you. We had 2 hurricanes in the United States, and where was the government? Nowhere, right? The supposed FEMA, they spent all their money on immigrants, right? And then they said they had no money and gave people $750, right?
It wasn't that was actually a loan too. That wasn't a gift of $750. That was a loan for $750, from what I heard.
Even worse.
Yeah.
But keep believing in government, because government is your friend, right? And then all you gotta do is keep worshiping money, right? The money is your God. But yet still they keep printing it and printing and printing it, and the purchasing power of that currency keeps going down and down and down. So you have to go and work longer hours and work more days in order to feed your family. And then one salary can't support a family. So the mother has to go in the workforce, and then that's when they get the children, because the TV raises the children, and then the schools inject all these woke policies into the kids, gender bending, talking about transgenderism, and a boy can be a girl, and you can give them puberty blockers and stuff. So this is a whole conspiracy to dumb down humanity. It's a multi-pronged attack.
It's not just to dumb it down, but dumb down and weaken.
Yes.
Dumb down, weaken, and
poison.
Poison, yeah. Because
if you think about it, right, what animal does the apex predator always target first?
The weakest.
It is always correct. It's always the weak. And these entities and these, I would say that they're more like advanced humans, the Annunaki gods. But even above them, they worship a dark energy. And it targets the weak. So this is why they took the man out of the house, put him in prison. The females raised the children, introduce a lot of propaganda through the TV, because the mothers, they're thinking that they're keeping the children quiet, but the TV's indoctrinated them. Then they send the children to school. They get all these woke policies injected in the consciousness of the children, right? Then you have on the other side, if none of that gets you, they can get you through religion, right? And then if that doesn't get you, you become a slave to the system, because you're going to be working a job that you don't like to make just enough money to survive. You're going to never have enough time to work on yourself, because you're working to make enough money to live. So what happens is that they get you one way or another, either through religion, either through the economic system, i.e. money, believing in government. So you go on benefits. Over your side of the pond, they call it food stamps and stuff. In Europe, we call it benefits, right? Same thing. And all this is doing is that you are failing to do work on yourself and leaving all of your thinking to someone else and having someone to save you. But guess what, people? No one is coming to save you. And look, for those religious people, Jesus isn't coming back because the word Jesus is an egregore. It's an artificial construct. There was a character called Yeshua or Yehoshua who became the Christ, but he's not the character Jesus, because the character Jesus has been sold to us as he being God. But what it is that Yeshua was an ascended master who came here to teach us how to escape the matrix and told us, look, just do what I do, think like me, and you'll get out the matrix too. That's basically the long start of the story of Yeshua, who became the Christ. Because the Christ is actually a spiritual office. It's a title. It's what you become. You become the Christ. And even when you look at the biblical text, it was never just called, he was never called Christ. It was called the Christ. All the time, it was the Christ, which is similar to you have the President of the United States. The President of the United States today his name is Joe Biden, but he's also the President of the United States. He has a governmental title. So he's both Joe Biden and the President of the United States, right? Two separate things. When he leaves office, he will be just Joe Biden, right? Yeshua, he was a man. He became the Christ. And he said, look, listen, guys, what y'all are doing isn't working. You need to basically work on yourself, find the kingdom inside, and you'll escape this matrix. That's basically what was his message. Love, compassion, and kindness, right? But what has happened is that people take his words, twist them, and in order to be a so-called Christian today, you have to negate every single thing that Yeshua said, right? Because what it is religion is just a set of statements that are dogma that you're not allowed to question. And when you question them, then you get pushed back vehemently against. And then you get told that it's blasphemy. And then you get told that you worship the devil. And, you know, when I went on to Sam Tripoli's show, so many people I saw when he put out the reel with me talking, some people said, this guy taught us from the devil. He is the devil. This is blasphemy. But this is the thing, right? How should I say it? I think that if people would actually go and do research for themselves, not necessarily that they may agree with me, but I think that they will realize that the narrative that they've been told is a lie, right? I'm not telling people to believe me or that I'm the oracle of truth. What I try to do is I try to get people to ask the right questions and provoke thought so that they can go and do research for themselves. Because when you do the research, it becomes your truth, not my truth. But what I would say is that I know a little bit about a little bit, and I tell people they may want to look over there, you may want to open that door, you may want to read that book, you know, and see for yourself. But the problem is that most people don't even want to do that, right? And this is where the disconnect comes, because it is very similar to when you ask people, oh, why do you support Kamala Harris? Oh, she speaks really nice. Okay, good. But why? What else? Oh, because this and that. Okay, so what has she done that you think is good? And then it's like an electrical shock to the system. They have to think. And they'll be like, oh, well, I don't know. So people that attack me, right, they have not really gone and done reading to see for themselves, but they're relying on people to tell them how to think instead of looking to see, tell them what to think instead of trying to figure out how to think. That's the difference, right? So this entire system has been rigged, and it is a very old system. This is why scripture says that there's nothing new under the sun. And all we're doing is repeating cycles and cycles and cycles. And this is why he who does not understand the past will actually make the same mistakes in the future, right? And a really good set of text to read is called the Nag Hammadi. And these are from the Gnostics. And the Gnostics comes from the word gnosis, which means knowledge. It's a Greek word. And And if you look inside the Quran, the Tanakh, the Old Testament, there's a common story, and then the Sumerian tablets, it appears that these archons or Anuna gods, when they created us, we had the potential to be greater than them. This is why it says that the fallen angels, who are the Anuna gods, the Anunnaki, the archons, were supposed to bow and worship us because we potentially would be greater than them, right? Now, this is why in the Nag Hammadi, the story that they don't tell us is that Eve, which is the feminine consciousness, the giver, the one, she's the teacher, she was gang raped by the archons in order to defile her so that her offspring would be under their control. And Pista Sophia, who is God of faith and wisdom, aka the Holy Spirit, entered Eve's body in order to protect her. This means that the archons were unable to defile the perfect spirit which lives in all of us. Because remember, I said that when they made us both male and female. And to prove that, it says, let us make man. It didn't say, let us make man and woman. It said, let us make man. Because the feminine spirit, the feminine energy was in man. So man was actually androgynous. So this is why, even if you look at the story in Genesis as completely true, where they took a rib out of Adam and made Eve, well, that means that Eve was in Adam, right? Which means that Adam was both male and female. And in reality, the Great Spirit, the Mother, Father, God, is both male and female. Because how can God create if he's not both? If God is omnipresent, omnipotent, the all, the creator of everything, it means that not only is he the creator, he is the creation at the same time. Because the Gnostics explain it very well, where it said that in the beginning there was just form and void, and in the beginning there was nothing. But at the same time there was God. So God and nothing exist at the same time. But because there was nothing else but God, God had to create the universe so the universe would create him. So what I mean by that is that in quantum physics, you have the observer and the observed, but the observed will not be come into existence unless there was an observer doing the observing, right? It's just like a tree falls in the forest. Does it make a sound? Well, it only makes a sound if there's someone there to observe the tree falling to make a sound. So basically, we're talking about quantum physics here now, where you have nothing and everything at the same time, the alpha and the omega. Source created the universe, so the universe would confirm Source's existence. And then the Gnostics talk about you had first power, second power, you had things like Parabello, the triple powers, and then Sophia. Then you had man. So man is actually in the hierarchy of God. This is why Christ said that the Father is in him and we are in the Father. And there's to prove this here, there's a very interesting part of the Bible that isn't really talked about much. And this is called the high priestly prayer, and it is found in John chapter 17. And this is the clearest sign that the Son of Man is all of us, which is why I was saying that when God created the universe, he created derivatives of himself. It's sort of like to manage certain things, because if God is everywhere, it means that everything is God, right? The plants are God, the trees are God, I am God, you are God, everything is God. You know, the fish in the sea are God, the planets are God. This is why God is everywhere at the same time and knows everything, because it's through us that he knows everything. So there's a very interesting passage, and we start at, like I said, John chapter 17, and it goes I can start from 17 and come down. It says, sanctify them in truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me in the world, so I sent them in the world. And for their sake, I consecrate myself, that they also may be sanctified in truth. He says, I do not ask for these only, but also for those who believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, that they may be also in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you've given to me, I have given to them, that they may be one even as we are one, I in them, you in me, that they may be perfect, become perfectly one. So you see clearly, Christ is basically saying that we're all in, all of us are in together, right? The Father is in us, Christ is in us, we're in the Father, Christ is in the Father. So if we're all one, we're really all one consciousness, right? We're one mind, one body, one spirit, one consciousness. So this is where he's talking with the Son of Man. And the Son of Man is allegory for what is happening today, which is the awakening of mankind. Because the Son of Man is us understanding that we all are God. And one of the things that I was misquoted by when I did the show on Sound Tripoli is that people said that I said that I am a God. I said that I am God. There's a difference. There's no definite article. Means it's separation. If I say that I am God and you, my brother, are God and the trees are God, it means that we all are God. We're together. This is why, to prove what I'm trying to say is like, if you are talking to someone and then they start to feel a little bit sad, that can actually also make you sad a little bit, right? And depend on where you are, how empathetic you are for, energies and stuff and people, you could actually become super sad, right? But you will feel something because that person is you and you are that person, right? We're all one. And quantum physics shows that you can have an atom and you can have another atom in another part of the world. And what you do to that atom, the atom on the other part of the world will have the exact same result and outcome. Everything is one. We're all one. So when people hear me, I'm very careful with my words. I say that I am God. You are. There's no separation because we all are one. And if people want a series of books to read to understand this concept well, is a set of books from Saint Germain. And it's a bit of a trilogy series. The first one I would say you start with is called Unveiled Mysteries. The next one is called The Magic Presence. And then the next one is called The I Am. And this is why Christ's most powerful words were spoken through the I Am. And what that really means is that Christ was he was speaking through his God self. He was basically the God man. Now, the thing is that religion, what they do is that they do a lot of semantics and word trickery. So when he was speaking through his God self, he was speaking as if he were God, because he was God, just like all of us are God. But there's a bit of nuance to it. When you speak through the I Am, that thing has to manifest, because that is your God power in you. Because the I Am invokes now that this thing must be in the etheric realm. And then when you connect really well in the etheric realm, you're able to make that thing manifest. This is why Christ said, I am the truth, the way, and the life. He also said, I am the resurrection and the life. So what that means is that when you speak through the I Am, you are invoking your God power. And what it is that religion takes you away from that, so you're not able to understand that you are greater than you think you are, and the power of the universe is inside of you, you know? people don't understand that. Okay, let me give context to why I say that. So there's a very interesting thing in existence called the placebo effect.
Yep.
And when normally drugs are brought to market, they always do a double-blind placebo test, right? And what that means is that neither the the control groups, sorry, and the doctors know who is getting the saline solution or the sugar pill or the actual quotation marks medicine. So when the results show, the studies show that about 33% is about 30 to 33% of all of these double-blind placebo tests done. The people that got the placebo cured themselves. And this is because of the power of their mind. Because these people believed that they were getting medicine so they would heal. And a really good set of books to read are Joe Dispenza's books. And he shows with great detail how powerful the placebo effect is and how we can cure ourselves. This is why when Christ was out healing, people believed that he was the Christ. And because they believe that even if he can't heal me, if I just touch this guy, if I'm just next to this guy, I'm going to get healed. It was through their belief. And one time there was this situation where this lady touched his coat. He knew that someone touched him because he felt the energy leave his body. And that lady was cured. And this is why he would say to people, through your belief, you are saved. Go forth and sin no more. Through your belief. So basically, he understood the concept of the placebo effect and how powerful the mind is, because the mind is much greater than we understand. On the flip side, there's something called the nocebo effect, which has the opposite. So there's a very, very good case in Joe Dispenza's book, and I think it was, I can't remember which book, maybe I think it's Being Superhuman. No, sorry, wrong book. Is The Placebo Effect. You Are the Placebo, right, that was it. And there was this situation where this guy went his doctor in June. He got diagnosed with cancer, and the doctor told him that he's going to give him a drug that is being tested in the market, and he said it will cure him. He says the results look very, very good. Now, the doctor knew that he couldn't get the medicine, so he just gave him saline solution. And the patient improved dramatically. And then what happened is that the FDA brought a case against that company that manufactured the drug. And when the guy heard about it, he started to regress and get really, really sick. He went back to the doctor. The doctor told him, don't worry, I'm going to give you the purest of the pure of this particular drug. He says, this will work. Gave him another saline solution, and the guy started to improve. Now, I missed one part. He said to the doctor in June, I want to at least make it to Christmas to spend Christmas with my family. Right? So this was what he said. So after a couple of months where he found out about the case, the doctor gave him the other saline solution and he improved. Just before Christmas that same year, the FDA took the actual people to court. The court case started, and it was shown that it was all BS and that they were doing false marketing. And I think from memory in the book, 3 days later, the guy died. And all up to that point, the guy was improving. So the guy improved the first time, then regressed, improved again, and then a few days before Christmas, he heard about it. And then a few days after, I think it was 3 days, but it might have been slightly longer, and he died. And basically, when they did the autopsy, it showed that he never even had cancer. That's the mad thing about it.
Yeah. Wild.
Yes. Yes. So this is why I say to people that the mind is more powerful than we think. And this is why I say that Christ knew about this and he was telling people through your belief. So I would say that in a lot of cases, Christ never actually healed people, but people healed themselves because they believed that he was going to heal them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So all he was doing is that he was using some sort of, how should I put it, high-level mind hacks to get the people to heal themselves. But the problem is that religion and then all the other systems that have come afterward have sort of like kind of like led us astray, where we don't like try to find this power inside of us. We don't try to find the kingdom inside of us. We don't try to heal our fears and traumas. We don't try to do work, on ourselves. This is why we have relegated all of our thinking and salvation on a savior that's supposed to come. The government, the Messiah, Jesus, or the Mahdi for the Muslims, there's always a savior, right? And the thing about the word Jesus is that that word is not the original name. As I said before, it is actually an artificial construct, because character Christ is an office, is a spiritual office. And also the word Jesus never existed, because it took about 1,200 years for the word Jesus to come in existence, right? And the first thing that they did is that it was a 4-step process, and it took 1,600 years. So in original Orthodox Hebrew, it was called Yehoshua, and it was spelled capital Y, capital H, capital W, apostrophe, and then Shua, S-H-U-A. Now that evolved, was abbreviated by removing the HW. So in Aramaic, which is the language that Yeshua spoke, it was capital Y, apostrophe, S-H-U-A. So this is why we say it's Yeshua, or you can use Yehoshua. Then the Aramaic/Hebrew name was transliterated into Greek, and it was called Eseus. And then the Greek was transliterated into Latin and became Jesus. So in the 1611 King James Version, the Bible had the Latin spelling. And then the Latin for Jesus was translated into Jesus in English. This is why I say that the character Jesus never existed, because the construct, right, is what I'm trying to say. But there was a guy that was called Yehoshua, and he became the Christ. And the thing is that Jesus is an actual egregore, because it is a non-physical entity or thought form, because basically it represents a thought form, or in the collective mind, that only becomes what it is through the collective thoughts and feelings of people, right? So this is why I say that the word Jesus is just an egregore, right? Now, then to clarify, the consonant form J was not known in the 14th century. Therefore, both J and I use the Y sound, as in the word yes. So in Greek, Eseus would be pronounced Jesus, Yeseus. And then the Latin Jesus would have been pronounced as Jesus, or Jesus. So in the 18th century, the letters J and I were split into a consonant and vowel, and the J was adopted as the consonant letter. Now, since the new consonant J was closer to the sound of the modern Y, the letter J was chosen in the translation to Jesus. This is why I say that the character called Jesus never existed, which is just many lies that was injected into religion to take us further away from the truth that Yahushua was an ascended master who became the Christ in order to teach us how to get back to source, right? So this is why people like try to they kind of miss my words, where I say that, Christ existed, but not how we think. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the end game here to keep people from, finding, ascending or finding, the kingdom within? Is it to keep people in a state of slavery? Like, whereas, whatever 1,000 years ago we were mining gold as slaves for the Annunaki, and now we're just mining digital currency for whatever central banking cartel there is. Is that what it is, or is it why would this other faction want to keep people from finding, finding the truth or finding out what's going on?
Well, the truth is that they want to keep us enslaved. They want to keep us dumbed down.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they have to give us a lot of narratives.
Yeah.
They have to take us further away from the truth. And they have to basically give us a lot of systems of control to control our minds, our spirits, and then our physical bodies, right? So this is why you find that basically what they do is that they try to tell us like this thing and that thing is what it is, but in reality, it's not. And what it does is that it keeps us in a perpetual form of slavery, so that we are holding to them. You understand?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's
so
the game, though,
is
to keep us to keep us enslaved is what the goal is.
Yeah, basically, it's to keep us enslaved, and not only to keep us enslaved, but is that they want to keep the negative energy on the planet. Because what that does is that because they feed off the negative energy, right?
Okay.
So they're almost like, I would say, energy vampires. So what that does is that when they, because think about it, right? Religion uses fear in order to keep us in the religion. Government is another religion, and that also uses fear. So if you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. If you don't listen to the government, then you go to jail again, right? And then now, if you you don't pay your bills, then you probably end up going to jail. You lose your house, you lose your car, etc., etc. It is all about fear, right? This is why we live in a guilt and fear-based matrix, right? So this is why what they do is that they keep us in constant fear by giving us using the media to use a lot of propaganda. And all that does is that causes us to be in a negative state, right? And that means then that we're easily controlled because basically we don't know what is real from what isn't. And then because we're in a state of fear, it means that they can bring in the systems that they want, because no one is really going to question anything, because it is all fear that is being injected in us. You understand?
Yeah.
And the whole system is built on fear. Because think about it. Look what religion says. If you don't do this or do that, you're going to go to hell, right?
Yep.
If you do this or you do that, you'll be saved, right? And basically going to hell means that you're going to die forever, and going to heaven means that you're going to live forever. But there's one commonality between the two: forever. So if you're going to live forever or you're going to die forever, it means that you're an immortal being. This is why I say that, we can't die. We just go to a different plane. But consciousness and spirit doesn't die. It is forever. You understand? So the end game is basically to get us to defile ourselves to such a way that the spirit no longer dwells in us. And after the spirit stops dwelling in us, we will be able to merge with the machine because they're going to offer us the opportunity to be gods. And I made a call on a podcast last year or the year before. And I said that the way I see it from looking at tea leaves, the last thing they're going to do is have extraterrestrial involvement. It's either going to be a real alien invasion, a fake alien invasion, or a combination of both. And look what we starts in the news cycle, where some guy is saying that they're going to start to tell us that they found alien life and that aliens are actually, there's another species out there that's just like us, etc., etc. This is all predictive programming, right? And they did all of this from back in the movies, right? So, you know, the way I see it is that they just want to try to have us as slaves, perpetual slaves. Because in Lil Wayne, he said that he set up the system that would be that we never break out of the system, right? And if you look at it now, the way the system is made, I have to give Jack the Jacket, it's brilliant. It's absolutely very, very clever. They have us on all angles. They get us either in the religion, they get us trapped in the economic system, they get us in the government system where we so they get us in the religious system, the economic system, or they get us in the government system where people believe in that the government is their savior, or they get us through the schools, the health system, or they just make us sick with poisonous. You know, they don't give us real information. They give us propaganda in the movies and in the movies and the media. Sorry, and we don't know what is real because the CIA director, I think in the 70s, said that we will know that our job is complete when the American people believe everything that they see, which is really a lie or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. You know, so the end game is to get us to basically be godless, not realize our divinity, not realize that we can actually ascend, we don't need them, and that, you know, we are just little insignificant things, and, you know, what we would do is we would just inject chips into our body and become gods. But they don't want us to do things like meditation, do things like psychedelics, get into shape, you know what I mean? Be kind, be compassionate, read books, do exercise. They don't want us to do any of that. They just want us to be slaves, right? And this is why they do all these things to us, because they love us so much, you know?
Do you think when, you know, we would at the beginning, we glossed over, we talked really quick about like, you know, brain implants and AI and whatnot. Do you think people could use that against them to kind of, you know, gain more knowledge to be able to ascend? Or do you think putting, you know, merging with the machine would kill what's ever left of the spirit?
I think it would kill whatever's left of your spirit, because what will end up happening is that they will end up putting thoughts into our minds. So our thoughts will be our thoughts. Then they'll be able to manipulate and control. So we would not be free, right? We would be under their auspices, you know, and their control. And this is the problem, right? Because they don't want, there's no love. The system that they have is anti-human.
Yeah.
So in reality, the only way that you can get back to source and to see that you are part of the source is to overcome your fears and traumas and do the inner work. The entire construct that they have is to take us away from that. So if they're taking us away from that, it means then that we can't actually ascend and go to a higher level, and we would do it artificially, but that would be in another control matrix.
Yeah.
Because we live in a matrix within a matrix, and then the AI merging with and the computer chips would be another matrix. So it'll be a matrix in a matrix in a matrix. And that matrix, there'll be no getting back, because when you start to tap in then to the brain, then you start to tap into consciousness, then it means then you can manipulate the person on a level that, man, you will be able to control their bodily functions. You'll be able to control how slow the metabolism is. Like, you could speed it up if you want, but they're not going to do it for benevolent reasons. They're going to do it for malevolent reasons.
Sure.
So this is why, it's just bad news.
Yeah. So, we're a couple hours in, and we can go as long as you want. But I think we've harbored on the kind of the negatives, I guess, for lack of a better word, but or the dark energy or the bad stuff. What can people do to break out of that, right? Like I know, and we've kind of touched on it, but like if someone was just hearing all this for the first time and was like, what can I do to make sure I get out of this, control grid or this matrix, or just to avoid this stuff? Like, what are the steps that even the simple first steps, that you would advise for that?
Okay, good question. And the thing is that I have to cover the dark stuff,
sure, of
in
course,
order to get to the light stuff, because the light stuff will not make sense unless you understand the dark stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
got to know the enemy.
Exactly. So first thing I would say to people is that, one, there's nothing to fear in the sense that knowing all of this stuff. And what I would say to people is that the first thing that you need to do in order to sort of push back against the system is to get fit and to get in shape. And my take on it is that you go through the body. And the reason why I say that is that in order to get into shape, you have to change your mindset and you have to have consistency. And there's something called delayed gratification that you will be practicing, because you don't getting in shape is not something that happens overnight. It happens over time. So this mindset that you're cultivating will help you on the spiritual journey, because to evolve spiritually isn't going to happen overnight either, right? So when you start to get into shape and you start to eat better and you start to eat better food, you're putting higher energy food into your body. So you actually start to raise your vibration by default. And then the exercise as well will also to help raise your energy as well, because it is impossible to be, while you're doing exercise, to be depressed at the same time simultaneously. It is impossible, right? So getting into shape is the start to get you onto this journey. And then what will happen, another thing that I would suggest is that you start to read books, or if you like audiobooks, you listen to audiobooks. And the reason why is that when you start to read books, you expand your knowledge base. You don't have to agree with everything I have said or everything in the book. But what you're doing is that you're opening your mind. Because what will happen is that as you start to eat better, exercise, you're creating new habits, then now you're reading books, then now what's happening is that you're having a mind-body connection, because you're connecting to your mind, which will help your creativity. And what will happen is that ideas will start to flow to you, because you're reading books, you're exercising, and you're raising the energy, frequency, and vibration in totality. Now, what will happen is that over time, these two will start to merge, the mind and the body. I call it that they're getting married. And when that happens, then now you start to realize the spirit is inside of you, right? So once you start to realize the spirit is inside of you, then you start to do different things. You start then to realize, okay, things like meditation make sense, right? Things like psychedelics make sense. The things now of avoiding certain types of foods, avoiding certain types of people, avoiding certain types of music, etc., etc., etc. And you're starting to create a feedback loop now where your thoughts are what create your reality. So what happens now is that the better you feel the better thoughts you have. The better thoughts you have, the better choices you can make. The better choices you make, the better your life the better you feel again, and the better you feel, the better choices you make, and the better your life becomes, right? So this is why I say start with the body, because the body is the thing that you can control. You can control what you eat. You can control if you do exercise or not. It's all up to you. And then you start to work on the mental aspect. So this is why I say that I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle, because my take is you go through the body, you get the body moving, and then through my coaching, I will mentor and coach people, and then they will be able to come into themselves, because we have to realize that no one is coming to save us, and we have to save ourselves. And to do that, we need to work on ourselves. But it's a multi-leveled and multi-layered approach. And the first thing to do is get the body moving, because the body is the vessel. The spirit dwells in the body. The body is the temple of God. And the only way to realize that the body is the temple of God is to treat it like it's a temple. Get it in shape, get it strong. But that only happens through having a certain mindset, because you're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to do it even when you don't feel like doing it, right? So this is why I say that you go through the body and start with the body. You do that, then you'll be on the way, with improving yourself and stuff like that, So that is I would say that that's a very good way to do it. And if, the things that I spoke about tonight, and also you would like to get into the best shape of your life, you can always hit me up on Instagram at Adriano_246, or my name, Todd Cave, on Facebook, and send me a message and say you heard me on The Big Truth and you're interested in getting in shape and what's not, and let's see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army, because I'm on a mission to help as many people as I can. And what I realize is that when you start, if you want to push back against the system, work on yourself. The system wants you weak. The system wants you dumb. The system wants you stupid. When you work on yourself in all levels, you push back against the system, and we together collectively can break the system. Because we can't change the world, but we can change ourselves. And when we change ourselves, then we change the world. So if these things resonate with people, you can hit me up on my socials at Adriana_246, or my name, Todd Cave, and I'll help you and get you into the best shape of your life,
Absolutely, man. And for those that are driving and you don't got to write that down. Just check the show notes. I'll have that information on how to get in touch with Todd in the show notes. And Todd, I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. This was wild and a lot for people to digest on all fronts. I think people are gonna have to listen to it a couple times. You know what I mean, to really get it resonating. So thank you so much, man. I'm gonna shut this off, but I'm not gonna hang up. So just hold on 1 second.
Also, if people like content like this, they can always check out my podcast. I have my podcast as well, and it's called The Conscious Man 7. So head over there and have a listen, because I also, on the other side of the table, where I interview guests as well.
Absolutely.
I've also got some great content over there with some interesting guests.
Is that where can people get that wherever on all the podcast platforms?
You find me everywhere: YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, Spreaker, Amazon, Spotify.
All right.
Everywhere you can find me, man. But the best place to find me is on Spreaker. That's where I upload to first, and then it trickles out to all the rest. But I'm everywhere, so
okay.
You can check me wherever you like. And also, look, if people are interested really in the spiritual journey or overcoming some fears and traumas, also hit me up on my socials, because I help people connect with magic mushrooms, because this helps people to overcome their fears and traumas and to break the habit of being themselves, because the medicine shows you who you are. And I also have a merch store that helps support the podcast.
Yeah.
Shirt called Todd and Me. And I also have Conscious Man 7. So Todd and Me is the name of the store, and the Conscious Man 7 is the name of the podcast. So anyone that wants to help out the podcast and help us to get better equipment, then, just get some merch. And if you do, send me a picture of yourself and I'll promote you on my podcast and on my socials as well,
Absolutely. And we could do a whole nother episode on mushrooms, man. I'll talk to you about that offline and or psychedelics. But dude, again, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate you. Appreciate your time. I'm going to shut this off, but I'm not hanging up. So just hold tight 1 second.